The first, what I'm really wanting to talk about a little bit is with the serve. And some fallacies, some interesting things that are going on the floor, and really seeing what has been happening. I'm going to start just for a second with a piece that is from Jack Brody. He's a tennis pro out on the West Coast in California. And I think he introduces this topic really well. So if y'all bear with me for a minute, I'm going to let him do a little bit of the introduction of this. But then what I want to do is go much deeper and to some things that I'm seeing and some things that have happened throughout time. And we're going to kind of delve into the realities of whether we agree or disagree with what's going on in today's moment.
It was either Navratilova or Mary Jo Fernandez who said during this last Australian Open that one of the strokes the women still need a lot of improvement on is the serve. And I, for one, could not agree more. I firmly believe it's the way that the women have been taught to serve that are desperately holding them back. They've had this quick fix over the last 10, 15 years where you bring your feet together and you just bend your knees and you just push up into the serve, and that will give you a good serve. And it's this teaching that's really holding the serve back. This methodology creates a disconnect between the hips and the arms, and therefore there's no coil produced, no balance, and no rotation. I'm here to tell you today that the reasons the women don't serve as well as the men have nothing to do with strength and everything to do with technique. It's a nice system. Number one, the hips and arms are connected through a figure eight. The hips make a small movement and the arms follow in a larger figure eight. Secondly, the 45-degree angle is archetypal in geometry, nature, and in the serve. Take a look here and we'll see how they play out. Let's look at the number one woman of the world, Caroline Wozniacki. Watch all these frames go by. And watch the lack of hip rotation. See this? First thing she does is draw her shoulders back and lock her front leg. What this does is it disconnects her hips from her upper body. She actually locks her hips. So now she's forced to use her upper body and her arms to work her way into the serve. This is like the tail wagging the dog. Okay, see her arms are moving into the toss, and look at her lower body. Completely passive, inactive. She's not drawing into any coil at all. So what's going to happen here is she'll have no slope in her shoulders, and she won't have a dynamic way to go into the serve. Look, both her arms are up, the ball's almost left her hands. There it goes. Look at her lower body. It's perpendicular to the net. And take a look at her shoulders. There's no slope in her shoulders. See that? They're very passive. So now she's going to try and compensate by pushing down into the court, straight down, once again, perpendicular to the net. And then she's going to try and push up into the serve and get power through her legs and by swinging her arm fast. But look what this causes when she gets up there. Because she doesn't come out of a coil, because she just pushes straight into the serve, she has to try and overcompensate. Look at her face. She hasn't even hit the ball yet, and she's looking towards the ground. So she's very off balance, and the energy is not going into the contact point. So it's a very, very inefficient serve. And you'll see here, there's a big difference between the women's serves and the men's. Now we're going to take Nadal. He's not even known really for his serve, but he serves pretty much like the rest of the men. First thing he does is he slopes his shoulders forward. Look at that. His shoulders are actually forward and butt sticking out. And it's his hips. Watch this. You see, as his foot comes down, look at his hips. They're the first thing to move. His racket is still over the baseline, but his hips have already started moving. Look at that 45-degree angle. See that? He's got that 45-degree angle on the hips, and it's a small movement, but it's very important. Now he's almost gotten into his full coil. See that? Now look at the slope in his shoulders. See, where Wozniacki's were almost straight across, his shoulders are sloped. So when he comes out of his coil, his eyes rest easily, comfortably up at the hit. See that? He's making contact, and he looks very comfortable and balanced at the hit. And We can see this in all the men's serves versus the women's serves. There are some women that serve correctly, but we'll show you those in a minute. Here we go. Yankovic, same thing. Hips really haven't moved. She brings her feet together. Hips are parallel to the net. Both arms are up. Look at the lack of slope in her shoulders. See that? So now she's going to have to overcompensate and really swing hard, and look at her eyes. You see, they're peering up at the hit, but her face is actually facing the net. So the energy's not going up into the ball. Let's see Roger. Nice serve here. Hips moving. Look at the emblem on his shorts. See that? At a 45-degree angle to the net. Look at the beautiful slope in his shoulders. It gets tighter and tighter into his coil. Now, when he comes around with his hips, it's effortless. See that? Because he's already had the first part of the serve conquered. Now, look at his contact. Eyes comfortably up at the hit. He's not peering at the ball. He's got his whole face looking up there. So in order to have a comfortable, balanced hit with the energy going up to the contact, you have to have the proper coil going into the serve. Let's take a look at another number one player, Martina Hingis, one of my favorite players. And she goes into her serve. Look at those hips, parallel to the net. You can see it right there. Look at the lack of slope in her shoulders. So she's going to try and bend her knees. See that? And now when she comes around, look at her face, looking straight at the net, almost looking down into the court. And she just has barely contacted the ball. So there's no energy going up into the hit. Now, as I said a minute ago, some of the women do serve well. Serena, great example. She's probably got the best serve in the women's game right now. Watch the Nike logo on her skirt. See that? It's moving ahead of the arm, and look at her hips. They get into that nice 45-degree angle. Right? So she doesn't just bend her knees. She screws down into the court, and then her hips start to come around. Look at the emblem. Now they're coming around, and look at her eyes. She's up there on the hit. Now I'm going to show you one of my top juniors. See this? This is during one of our lessons. Look at the stripe on his pants as he goes into his serve. The nationally ranked boy, Warren Wood. Look at that slope in his shoulders because of the way he draws his hips into the serve and screws down into the court. And now when he makes contact, all the energy goes up into the hit. Eyes are up there very comfortably. So because of the way the serve is taught to the girls, there's a disconnect between the hips and the arms. And this causes a definitive lack of hip rotation that impedes the women's serves. Let's take a look here. Nadal, see that hip rotation at the 45? And Wozniacki, parallel to the net. You can see there's no action in the serve. Same with Hingis. See how passive her lower body is because her hips are not really screwing down into the court. Look at Serena. See how her hips are at that 45 and she's really pulling with her hips? Same with Federer. Look at that nice hip rotation on his serve. May look small, but it makes all the difference in the world. Once again, take a look at Warren. See that nice hip rotation, and look at the shoulders, nice and sloped, ready to come up and strike the ball with energy. And here you have Hingis. Look at her shoulders, parallel to the ground. Hips are very inactive. There's no screwing down. She's just bending her knees. So all of this causes an imbalance at contact because the women are overcompensating for a lack of coil in the beginning. Take a look here. See how Wozniacki's face is into the court where it should be up on the hit. And look at Nadal. His eyes are comfortably resting on the contact, keeping his energy and his body weight up into the hit. Once again, Hingis almost looks towards the ground when she goes to make contact. So her arm is all alone up there. There's another view of it. You can see there's no weight, there's no energy in the contact pointer.
So now we come up with this question. How did we end up with two completely different serving models? I mean, when did this divergence occur? How did it occur? What's going on? There's a gentleman by the name of Carl Mays. He coached Kim Clijsters. He worked for the British Lawn Tennis Association. And he declares that the whole problem is that women aren't capable of this surf. Okay? That's the problem, that we're not physically capable of. So we're going to go through, we're going to take a look at some of these things, look at some historical representatives, and try and figure out, is he right? Do we agree? Do we disagree? And what historically has happened to the women's surf? This is a player by the name of Anna who played for AUM. She was around 350 in the world, I believe, in singles, and came to play college tennis in the United States. Came over and said, you know, I need help with my serve. Could you please take a look? And I think you're going to find very similar to the model that you just saw. And the first thing that I saw from watching her, you can almost hear the way she was talking. The first thing that I could hear someone saying to her is, listen, dear, what you have problems with is your toss. And let's keep the toss really, really simple. Let's just put it straight out in front and just go straight down and straight up here. And that way, it'll sit right out there in front. And there used to be a lot of controversy between whether you had a linear toss or a circular toss. But if you go back today and watch every man in the top 100, there is no controversy. Because every single one of the men in the top 100, they start with their hand here, and again, just as you were seeing, their first move is in terms of engaging their hips. So if I'm going to turn this shoulder and coil back, it's attached to this one with a bar in between. So the only way that I can get my shoulder turn and my hip turn is for the toss to come on back. If I do this, it isolates that from being able to coil. So the moment she was told, whatever you do, keep this straight out in front, it completely stopped any ability to load and coil. What you'll see with the men with the toss, and it was funny because we had these 3 little boys who came to Jackson when we were in Jackson, and they were missionary kids. Cleon, the Morrell brothers, you remember them. They show up, and they grew up on this island, this kind of island in the middle of nowhere. And the oldest boy was passionate about tennis. And he had taught his other little siblings to be passionate about tennis. It's the only thing they had to do on this island in the middle of nowhere. And they come out, and we say, sure, you can play in front of them. And they walk up, and they have the most professional tosses. And I'm sitting there watching these 3 boys, and I'm starting to get mad. Because I'm thinking, okay, I spend hours trying to fix this, trying to teach people this. 3 little kids from the middle of nowhere figure it out all by themselves. What do they know that I don't know? So I'm sitting on the side of the court, and I'm looking at them mad, and I'm looking at them going, okay, I've got to figure out what they know that I don't know. And the first thing that I learned from watching them is they don't toss. The secret to a great toss was whatever you do, don't toss. When you watch, and we're going to see an example, several examples in a minute, the men are all bringing their hand right to the inside of their left thigh, and then all they do is leverage their hand off of their hip. You think about it, if you were going to do the limbo, the first thing, if you're going to do this, you just put your hands out in front for balance. It's just a natural balance. So I'm not lifting my arm. My arm's not moving. I'm tilting my body. we're going to see a completely different scene in a minute. But let's just start right here with Anna. So you see the left arm, or for her right arm, just goes straight up. So everything is just very linear, which again puts the rest of her body very linear. And then the second thing she's been told is, now what I want you to do is bend your knees. Very important. We've got to have a better serve, so we're going to bend our knees. So now you're seeing 3 lines, a straight line down her back, one to the knees here and one here. But that's not at all the model that you're going to see from the men. With the men, you're going to see 2 lines. You're going to see 1 line here, 1 line here. Completely different engagement and body position. So because she hasn't turned her hips properly here in the beginning, they all come in over-rotated. So because they don't turn enough in the beginning, they come in over-rotated. That's why you see the head opening up. Again, exactly what you saw before. The head is almost looking down. She fortunately was left-handed, so she at least could hit a slice. But there's no way she could hit a topspin serve. I took one look at it. I said, let me guess, you don't have a topspin serve. She said, no, I can't hit a kick serve. Said, you basically miss your serve low and into the net. She said, that's right. All my mistakes are in the net. Shoot, how do you know that? I'm like going, I don't know. So now we have a different girl who showed up. And she plays for Clemson, one of the top players in the country. She's doing a little bit better with this. She now has got her hand so that now she rocks back with her foot. It's just dropping right onto her hip. She's got some of these things right. And now you can again listen to what it was that she heard and how she was taught. So you can kind of see what she heard, how she was taught. Again, her left hand extends up, pretty good. And then the next thing you're going to hear is, what I want you to do is to bend your knees and stick your butt out. Because that's going to be the model for a great serve. So we see her bend her knees. And now if she's going to do that, she's going to have to stick her butt out. And how in the world did we come up with this? But if you're listening to what she was told, I don't see a bad athlete here. I see a really good student with really poor information. Sit down. And then look at everything she was doing. You can see. Put your left hand up. She put her left hand up. Extend it as hard as you can. She's doing it. You see, bend your knees. She couldn't try any harder. Put your butt out. She couldn't be trying any harder. So the problem is you don't have a bad student. You have a student who's dealing with poor information. And this kind of teaching that's going on about getting into this position, there's no muscles, no major muscles that go down this side of your leg. So what are you going to fire off of? The strength and the power is all here. So the men, when you saw them come and load, They loaded and used all of these muscles. But she's here. Let's see if you're going to behave. No. Okay. That's all right. I'm not doing it. So we're going to compare a little bit of some of these concepts that you're seeing from what's going on, and we're going to compare some of the women to some of the men. And again, the first question you have to ask is why? Why? How did we get into this mess? What happened? So now we have Pete. His hand's going to come right into the inside of his left thigh. The foot is up. And then the very next thing he's going to do is what I would refer to as flipping over. Here's what I mean by that. When you go in a weight room, you start and you're lifting a bar and everything is here on your front side. But when you get to here, you flip over and now you drive everything from your back. Go watch any baseball pitcher, any quarterback. The first way they start to throw is they flip over and all the power is coming from their back, and that's how we get this propulsion right here. Well, he comes, rests the hand, twists the hip, rests the hand, and flips over and now starts to drive from his back up. See, I thought as a kid, they said, look at the ball. I would have my head here and lift my eyes and say, okay, I'm looking at the ball. These people aren't doing that at all. Their head is staying completely still with the axis of their back. And now they're laying on their back like, I always think of it like laying and looking at the clouds, okay. They're laying here. And now as you start to see that, now as you're doing that, you end up with creating this arc, and now you're just putting a ball on top of it. It's like a header in soccer. If you release that energy up, the ball's always going to go up. There's no other place it's going to go. Every time you're getting here, you put a ball on top of it, boom. It's a pinball flipper. As long as you load the machine correctly, it's going to work. It's just understanding that we're dealing with a simple machine and that we have to load that machine properly. So here you see him flipping over. Now he's engaging these long muscles down his legs, and you'll see everything just roll up into the serve. But they can't do that from that other model. You can't engage those muscles. And now he's creating two lines. From the back, it's not about arching your back. It's from the knees. My center of gravity is still right here. It's from the knees straight through my shoulders and from here down. Two completely different perspectives. And then you're going to see something with his arm. Something that we all know. That the best servers in the world have this amazing flexibility right here with their shoulder. That their hand is actually dropping below their elbow. Part of it is from the leg drop. But if from where you're sitting, I get you to stand up for 1 second. Everybody just stand up, put your arms out. So this would be internal rotation. When you go this way, external rotation. Turns out, we were always talking so much about pronation, but really the power in the serve is how the shoulder joint. Now, if you start here and just bend your knees, and now sit down, and now try and put your arm back. Try and flip it back from here. Now, let's try it the other way. Just tilt back. Now you see how much better you can engage your shoulder joint and do what he's doing. The women can't do it from that angle. Thank you. Y'all get to sit down. Now we got a good little stretch there. You can't serve from that model because it doesn't engage your body properly. Instead, you see his head naturally up. You see the elbow leading up into the serve. You see the rotation of the shoulder, which now is giving us this snap over the top. And the ball is going to go up. That's why the men get that huge clearance over the net and that straight spike, because they're going that way into it. So Max Murney was one of the kids when we were volunteers, and I think he's the best example because he does it so obviously. He just rests his hand on his hip, and then he just flips over. It's so obvious the way he does it that to me, as a role model, he's easy to understand. And again, one of the players who's served at 150. One of the biggest servers in the world, and you see very clearly the two lines of his body, not the three, and how he flips over and engages and drives everything from his back and from his shoulder. So, what happens? Is it true? Is it true that women really aren't capable of this? Is it true that we just have some students who physically can't do this? Well, this is a player that I coach, that I've worked with a good bit, by the name of Caroline Brinson. She plays for Georgia, is playing this afternoon in NCAAs. And one of the things that we started working with is with her topspin serve, her kick serve. And here's one of the thoughts I have. As the women started to get away from learning a great topspin serve, they lost innately the learning that the men were getting of how to load. You see, when you put yourself in this position and you're working on your topspin serve, you are naturally learning how to do this. The serve itself was asking you to do it. It was teaching you. The guys are going, okay, I got to get it up higher. You know, I'm going to serve volley, and back in the olden golden days of long ago, I'm going to kick it up high into their one-handed backhand and serve volley. How high can I get? How much action can I get on? It's interesting because we have Caroline. We also have a guy by the name of Jeffrey Brown who's playing for Louisville. And we were sitting down and they were having a discussion with some of our younger players. And we were talking about attacking returns. And I said, it's so important, you've got to attack the second serve, you've got to attack the return. And Caroline's going, yeah, everybody in college. I mean, you just, by the time you're in the 16s and 18s, you've got to be standing and attacking this return. And Jeffrey goes, excuse me, by the time we get to college, most of the guys' second serves are as tough to return in some cases as their first serve. And I thought, wow, isn't that interesting? By 16s, 18s college, you already have two completely separate paths that have been happening. So, in working with her topspin serve, here's kind of the model and how it looks and what's going on. The first thing she's doing is learning to tilt her body, and that is her toss and why it lays up there just very comfortably. The second is, that position. That thing that the women can't do. You see the twist, you see the engagement, and the heels are off the ground. You see these lines, and now the ball, the toss, is lined up. It's going to come straight down onto her head. So again, if you think about creating this arc and just releasing it up into the ball, it was funny. I watched a lesson last time we were on vacation. Ray and I watched tennis lessons. We're warped, but that's okay. And you saw this pro teaching a topspin serve, and he was doing it all with the arm. But really, again, it's about how do you swing the body in the direction you want the ball to go. How do you get your whole body swinging out in that direction? And it just seems that in some ways, the art and understanding of really being able to execute this well has, again, taking divergent paths. And you have these people telling women all over the world, you can't hit a topspin serve, so they're not practicing. Is it because of role models? Because now what you're watching Wozniacki, you're watching Hingis? Is it because they're better listeners? Sit down, stick your butt out. Is it because, I don't know. Where did this happen? But you clearly see the capabilities of being able to do this. So in teaching how your whole upper body swings in an arc and creates this topspin serve, and you remember, people used to, y'all are all playing with the guys, you're used to seeing people with their head tilted, coming around. Where did it go? What happened? Because the next thing I'm going to show you is the problem with me buying into this fact that women aren't capable of this is that I'm too old. I grew up knowing a lot of women who had great topspin serves, who had really great service motions. You see the men, again, every single time they're flipping over, their shoulders are dropping back behind their hips, their head is naturally sitting up, and then they're driving their upper body up into the serve. Different model. It's very simple. We have a little Rod Laver. Now remember, he wasn't allowed to step. I mean, he came up at a time when you were taught you couldn't jump, so the footwork is going to be just a little bit different. But basically the same exact position. The same when you sit down and you look at Pancho Gonzalez, one of the greatest servers in the history of the game. Same body position, same understanding. Now, Althea Gibson. You see, I love the movie A League of Their Own, if you've ever seen it. You know, it's about the women who are out there playing baseball while the men have gone off to World War II. But at that time, the girls who were on the tour were the jocks, the tomboys. We grew up playing catch with our brothers. We learned to throw. Billie Jean King's brother, Randy Moffett, pitcher for the San Francisco Giants. So these were the athletes, and they did what the guys did. So they had a throwing model. They were out there learning to throw. They were playing with the guys. They were learning from the guys. And when I was first coaching on the tour, Martina Navratilova. So what is it? Is it that we're not throwing? We're not playing with the guys? That we play a different?
Is it abbreviated serve?
Is it?
Seems like, especially when I was at UK, a lot of the women in Division I were being taught the abbreviated serve. Less room for error, the racket doesn't go below the waist, first serve percentage up.
But, you know, you come back and you have, now Andy did it differently. He did a very plyometric move, which Monfils copied perfectly for a little while. But again, from here, his first move was to flip over. It was a plyometric flip and explosion. So, I mean, I think it could be part of it, because you don't have the rhythm of here to there, but it really, the rhythm comes out of your feet. I mean, that's what that whole rocking chair with your feet become.
Walker, is there anything to be said for, if you look at the videos that you showed there, especially Navratilova, that's a great one. Navratilova was a serve and volleyer. Sampras, all the men you showed were all serve and volleyers. You know, I look at it from a standpoint of athleticism, you know, quad health, as you've already mentioned, very quad driven. But if you watch the landing points of all those serves that you showed, the men are 2 feet, 2.5 feet inside the court, and the women are landing on the line. So, is it quad health, or is it just the way they play the game?
And that's, you know, Lane brings up a great point. The first 10 years that I coached on the women's tour, every single player I coached was a serve and volley, with the exception of one who could serve and volley. Every single player I coached on the tour, we're talking top 30, top 10, was a serve and volley. That's how radically it's changed. And I'm not saying that you're not hitting on something.
Well, using that theory, then as a coach, I'm going to teach serve and volley, regardless of whether it's a male or a female. Okay, so using that as the baseline, you're going to teach both the men and women the same way. They're going to execute the way you just described it. And
because you got to teach them a serve.
And they've got to get the jump inside the court to get into the net.
So again, whether I agree, whether I feel like it has to go that way, I'm going back and teaching all kick serves for the same logic that you're coming up with. Different solution, but same logic, is that I've got to get these mechanics because it's clearly not because the women can't do it.
So what was the solution for the girl from Clemson, the one that was all squirrely?
She was only there for like a short day, and they just wanted me to take a quick look.
That's all you needed.
Yeah. I ran away. No, I really would very comfortably go back and rebuild that in terms of starting here and flipping, and I'm very comfortable that she could do that. You've got to get rid of these wrinkles here in the hips and really get to there. And from what you're doing right now, I would do also a ton of the plyometric with the medicine ball, working a lot and engaging this. It's interesting because my husband had 134 mile an hour serve as a kid. And he had what should have been a real tragedy. He had knee surgery, and the third knee surgery, they gave him a 50-50 chance of ever walking again. And when they did that, they told him for the rest of your life, you're going to do these straight leg raises. And he got to the point he could lift. I saw him lift a small man with a straight leg raise. He had done it 3 times a day religiously and lifted like 150, 180 pounds with straight leg raises. And in his diligence and the side blessing, what had he built? incredible strength and power there. Yeah.
So for a younger player who's maybe not entirely comfortable with continental grip yet, where does all this fit in? I mean, it seems like some of the mechanics here are dependent on having a continental grip, or if a player's using somewhat of an Eastern forehand grip at an early stage, could they still be trying to do these mechanics, or do those fit together?
Absolutely. The thing is that I think what it will do is it will encourage them all the more to start moving the grip. Because when you come in at this angle, if your hand's open, you're going to launch it. So it starts explaining much better of why. See, I mean, this whole body angle encourages that. The more that you're here, the more it starts making sense of why you would not want to use that grip. So I think it helps you logically get them to make the transition out of necessity. You know, what is it really going on with it? So we have Martina. And again, here's the body angle. Here's the thing that's going on. And Lane, also to answer your question, I'm going to have a few examples of players really landing in the court, actually in the next thing, that are not serve followers. Dimittieva being one of them, which is kind of surprising, but Madison Keys. Now, a little complex in the beginning of her serve, and sometimes when Lane and I were in Australia, her serve was way off in that tournament because of the complexities of it. But one of the fastest servers in the women's game, historically, and you see the same exact model. She flips over, everything comes from here. More recently, I don't think I have it on this DVD, but I have Brenda Schultz, who had 130-mile-an-hour serve for a long time, the fastest serve in the women's game, same model. When you sit down and you look at the women who are succeeding, here's the model that's going on. So you see completely different, and can they hit topspin serves? I'm going to say yes. Go watch Samantha Stozer. And I'm going to show you a few of those clips in just a second. But you see Madison Keys able to really kick it out of the stadium. Samantha Stozer can kick it out of the stadium. These ladies are all following. Oh, wait. Oh. It's really, this is the photograph. Now, here's the interesting thing, and this, I think Lane really brought that out. This doesn't matter whether they're hitting a topspin serve, a slice serve, or a flat serve. It's completely across the board. This is the position that every one of the men are sitting in. And then we have Cornucopia. And Sophia. I mean, again, Justine is somebody who worked very hard on her serve, and you can really see the involvement as she progressed
to a number one. A lot of those are good athletes, you know, great athletes on the men's side. And can the women do that art as well? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out because those are some of the great female athletes. Not that many of them are doing it, really. Not arcing their back. Maybe the lower back muscles are not strong enough to hold that like that. I don't know.
I start with little kids, and they can do it. In fact, I mean, it's now you're using your body, so it's so much easier on your arm and your shoulder. But again,
I'm just saying, look at all the pros for all these years taught the men. They didn't teach the women completely different. Why didn't the women pick it up the same way? What changed it? Why did the ladies not do what the men did? I mean, we teach them
that really is the
question. The same way too.
I think that is really the huge question. Is how did they get it? Is it because they had different role models, because they weren't throwing, because they weren't really working on their topspin serve, which seems to be a large part of aligning your body this way? Is it because they were better listeners? They were listening to some of the information, but like you said, in yours that wouldn't be the case. Is it?
Mine do the same thing. I mean, they're not arcing their back like that. You know.
But
so.
really,
Guys are and girls aren't.
when we were in Jackson, we didn't have any girl under that was 14 years or older that wasn't serving in mid-90s. Not a one. And one of them was serving 115.
What, looking back now, when I taught a lot of the young girls kick serve, they start having back trouble, and so I didn't push that as much as I did, and maybe that's.
And you know, I always heard, oh, the back, you know, topspin serve so hard on your back, and how you arch your back. And when you watch these guys, it's not arching your back.
No.
They are keeping a very straight line between here and here. So if this is my center of gravity, and I'm sitting right here with my center, then all I'm doing, I'm still keeping my center of gravity directly over my feet. Now I'm just taking this part and counterbalancing it right there, but I'm keeping a straight line, and everything's firing much more from here and from my abs, but it really isn't about this. So when you see Kornikova, who's here and trying to arch her back to do it, you're going, yeah, that would really be hard. But you can also see, as far as your shoulder, what a limitation in terms of being able to do it. I mean, and it just is interesting to watch how this has radically changed. So you see, yeah.
You mentioned that you started this at an early age with juniors, and back to Craig's point, you know, Mark Kovac does several serve and biomechanics presentations when it comes to tennis athletes. And the number one injury that they see in junior tennis players is in the back. Now, again, I come back to, you know, kind of what Craig said. It may come back to athleticism. It may come back to the training, which is a slippery slope. I mean, sending a 10-year-old in the weight room is dicey. I mean, do you think
and again, we're starting at so much younger ages than we ever have, but I'll start with just, you know, getting this and just starting to get them to connect and use the hips. I'm not doing radically, but just making sure that these things are moving in a unified fashion.
See, the problem is that you're doing it correctly, but what they're seeing is on TV, and then they're trying to duplicate what they're seeing, and that's what's causing the injuries.
When you look at the history of each individual player in their athletic career, whether they play neighborhood football or baseball, the good athletes that I teach already do what you're saying, and the ones that never did throw a lot. I even break it down where they could throw a ball over the net. A lot of them throw like this, cliche, they throw like a girl. And if they can't do this, then they're fundamentally wrong anyway. You can't teach them any
You know,
serve.
I'm all of y'all, I'm right there with the same problems that you're having. We're getting so much younger kids who have such poor throwing motions. And I just started something in the last 2 months that has become radically effective. We have never had players in an hour with poor serving motions just and start serving so much better in minutes. And I was reading a piece that Mark Elliott had out, maybe not, but Bruce Elliott had out. And you know how to do that. And he talked about 4 ways that the racket moves up to the ball. So I went, okay, I'm trying everything I can. And I started just taking an hour and doing those 4 things. And at the end of an hour, all the things that you're talking about, why they can't throw enough. And we're getting all the boys who can't throw now.
They're on their iPad. I mean,
They can watch it.
So the 4 things are, first first of all, just learning to move your elbow from down and back to up and forward and extending your arm. So the question is, how does the racket move up to the contact point? And it was really cool because they all started hitting up on the serve because the question was, so you have to engage your hip to get this, and it naturally got them to flip over because you can't get that up without tilting back here and extend up. And really, in almost all instances, that first piece is the hardest piece. They're all coming in with these locked arms, and they can't segment a throwing motion. They don't understand the kinetic chain and ability to segment. The second thing that you see, the second one so the first was the elbow here. The second one, which to me is the smallest of the group, is flexion. So flexion is how your wrist works in this direction. So I just take them up to the net, I show them this, and then I start showing them as you get to here, just letting the racket drop, and it really gets them more relaxed with their grip. And how do you release it up into the elbow? Extend the elbow, and now we're starting to just relax the hand, let it release up. And I'll bring out my iCoach on my phone, and I'm showing them Federer doing it or whatever, and showing how this is working, and then we go and do it for a few minutes. Then the third one, which we all know, is pronation. So in doing that, that's all their favorite part. Now I've got to the point that I'll just start with it on edge, so they're already to this point, and just work how well can you bounce the ball straight down on the court and spike it up. And they love that. They love it. They're trying to hit it over the thing, boom, and they start. So then we come back and we put it together, and then the fourth is the kicker. The fourth is what throwing is. It's what we just did a few minutes ago. It's the external, internal rotation. Turns out this shoulder joint is one of the fastest, most explosive joints on your body. And its ability to work in this direction is huge. It's why pitchers can throw as fast as they can. So when you have Federer and all these models who are always coming in with their arm, their bicep pointing forward, they have internal rotation. Then, as the elbow moves up and forward, and you flip over, there's your external rotation. And then this crazy move, again, is your internal rotation. So when you start getting them understanding what muscles and what joints fire in order, and I've never addressed none of that. Just how does the racket move up to the ball? And it solves the grip thing. Because you're doing that, and they're starting to have fun with how do I do that. And I've never had the kind of success teaching young players to serve that we've had in the most recent World Period. So now you're the jury. I presented the evidence. You're the jury. Is it because they are not capable? Is it because they're too weak? Is it because they have poor role models? Is it because they're better listeners? Got it. Is it because it's no longer trying to establish a kick serve? They're not trying to have the same objectives. How did we get into this mess?
Another thing, I think, girls my girls versus my guys, they'll take the time to work on their serve. And the girls want to hit one more ground stroke, thousands of more ground strokes. And so they have, you ask, I try to get them to hit heavy balls all the time. And a guy hits it so a lot, maybe he has a lot hand, maybe he has fast twitch, I don't know, but then you put a girl up there and she can't do this as fast as a guy. All my girls can, and they're got good girls, top girls, and they can hit a 95-mile flat fastball on ground stroke, but they can't hit a heavy ball, and we spend time and time.
What we find, and this is what I try and tell all the young kids, is that when you're working on your serve, and you start to develop a good serve, usually within 6 months, a year, I can have a girl who's serving well. Every tournament they go to, the parents of the other players go, come watch her serve. I want you to serve like that. Come watch her serve. And the moment they start getting that kind of positive feedback, then they get inspired to do it.
I'm going to be totally transparent here. I think I'm guilty because I know what happens to me is my 2'5" lady comes to me on Wednesday and says, I have a match on Saturday and I need my serve to go in. And I say, okay, stop moving everything but this.
Exactly. Yeah,
So I think I'm guilty there, and I wonder if what's happening is that that's a bias. I get a new student and I go, you need to just keep it simple. And let's not worry about all this. Let's just make this happen and get the ball in. So,
well, y'all have been incredibly patient, and I appreciate it very much. Like I said, I need to cut this one a little short because I have a second presentation that is really something that I did exactly for this group, something I haven't done before, and I'm excited about.
Can I ask you one more question?
Yeah.
I like I video all the pros, and some of the best pros in the world, I feel like still take their hand up straight. And then I see some, like a Matt's feeling it, takes his arm and runs it down the baseline and he throws it up. And, when you're teaching little kids, you're trying to get them to get the toss in the same spot. But when they do down the baseline, the ball goes over their heads. It's this motion a lot. And then trying to fix that as a pro, maybe I'm doing it wrong. I'm trying to get the toss the ball up, draw a little circle in front, and doing this, it's hard to get the ball to go there, unless they're a great athlete.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, and this is just my own personal impression on that, is that, again, the problem is the shoulder's attached to that shoulder. And so if you want this arm to move and accelerate, this shoulder has to be moving and accelerating. But it has to move on track. So I liken it to a bicycle and the chain on a bicycle. That it's going to go around the big gear, and then it's got to go around the small gear and tuck, but it stays straight in that line. And if it starts pulling out of line, you're going to be in big trouble. So it's how do you dynamically move by keeping it on track. And I've invented this crazy thing where they're actually serving with 2 rackets. And the left racket, just like a glove in baseball, becomes a counterbalance. It really teaches them how to use the left arm, how to use it. But also visually, you can see it sweep straight and reach and sweep straight under the path of the ball. And as it sweeps, it's teaching them how to stay in line. And the moment they pull out of line with that heavier racket, they shank it 4 times faster. So it really gets them to understand how to do that on track, and something I do with overheads as well. So thank y'all very much.
Thank you.